We begin tonight with breaking news on ISIS terrorists raising their black flags over the Syrian town of Kobani. Earlier, we saw this fighter plant the banner on a strategic hilltop. Now, new reports suggest the terrorists have broken through the last remaining forces who were defending this town and its 50,000 civilians. These are images of the lucky ones, desperate refugees who escaped across the border into Turkey just 6 miles away. But thousands of innocent men, women, and children, Muslims, Christians, Arabs, others, remain tonight, their lives very much in danger. Just hours ago, Senator John McCain offered this frightening warning that U.S. airstrikes were not working and that a massacre loomed in this very area.
There's a town called Kobani surrounded by ISIS, and if it falls, there's going to be a mass slaughter, and there will be no better indication of the ineffectiveness and fecklessness of this air campaign we're now seeing.
For days, the U.S. military has been providing limited aid to Kurdish fighters defending Kobani. And just last Friday, Pentagon Press Secretary Rear Admiral John Kirby acknowledged that the U.S. was monitoring this situation and launching targeted airstrikes to beat back the surging jihadist forces there.
We've been long watching the situation around Kobani. We've been aware of the threat that they pose to that place and to the residents there. We have conducted airstrikes in and around Kobani to try to relieve some of that pressure.
Despite those efforts, again tonight, the black banners of the Islamic State, look at that, are flying over this town. Lieutenant Colonel Ralph Peters is our Fox News strategic analyst. And Ralph, we saw it happen in Fallujah, we saw it happen in Mosul, we saw it happen in Ramadi, and now we see the Islamic flag over the town of Kobani, which they say is a strategic and important location for these fighters. Tell us why.
Well, it's important symbolically and practically. It extends the caliphate, and the Islamic State caliphate, Megyn, is real, and it's now, no matter what the president says. It extends it right up to the borders of Turkey, secures a vast stretch of northeastern Syria. It's symbolically important because the Kurds, it's an important Kurdish city, and the Kurds have been fighting hard to hold on to it. And it really is the battle for Syrian Kurdistan. So and symbolically, practically, it's very important. Senator McCain is right. There will be a massacre. They're still fighting the streets. The Kurds haven't given up. They're fighting house to house and block to block. But our president, who launched this phony air campaign basically to absolve him of any blame, to get him through his party through the November elections. This air campaign has been paltry from the start. He warned them we're coming. He hit empty buildings in the dead of night, empty camps. We're sending in jet fighters with low-yield precision munitions, basically guided hand grenades, to blow up individual pickup trucks, to kill 3 terrorists here, 4 there. Outside Kobani, where the terrorists from Islamic State were out in the open en masse with their vehicles, their persons, it was the perfect target for serious air power. B-52s doing area saturation bombing. But this president will not do it. He doesn't want casualties, not only civilian casualties, he doesn't even want a lot of dead terrorists. This is all a fraud, and those people in Kobani, among so many others, are going to pay a tragic price for a president's outright cowardice.
What are we going to do now, Ralph? I mean, obviously you're critical of the president. He has gotten involved in this via airstrike, which is something many did not want him to do. But what are we going to do now? Are we going to let this city fall? I mean, you've got John McCain warning of a mass slaughter of 50,000 innocents in this city, which people haven't been paying. Most people have never heard of Kobani before, but the experts like you and Senator McCain are telling us we need to worry. This is going to complete part of the main caliphate that they're after. And if the airstrikes are not going to protect this town, and already we see the black flags flying, what next?
Well, the time to hit them with air power, hit them hard, was before they got into the city when they were out in the open. Now we can't very well carpet bomb the city. I mean, it's one travesty after another. President Obama doesn't act to prevent tragedy. He reacts to tragedy. He reacts weakly. He mourns and does a little bit. But this tragedy, Megyn, it's going to repeat itself again and again and again, because we are not at war with ISIS or Islamic State. They're at war with us. But we're just making this fraudulent pretend effort that we're doing something. And by the way, our much touted allies in the Persian Gulf are doing far, far less. And the Turks, as they sit on the border and watch this slaughter unfold, President Erdogan, formerly Prime Minister Erdogan of Turkey, is playing a double game with us. We're acting as though we're the weak ones. We're not the superpower. And what he is doing is he is letting Islamic State militants slaughter Kurds. And then when the Kurds are slaughtered, then he may act against Islamic State because he wants an Islamist government in Damascus. He just doesn't want Islamic State. He wants his extremists in Damascus.
What does this do to the propaganda that ISIS offers out there? That, you know, the U.S. comes in, and according to our own allies on the ground, the airstrikes are not doing enough. They're not doing much, according to some. What does this do to ISIS and its recruiting efforts?
Megyn, you just asked a crucial question that nobody else is asking. And the answer is, it's a huge recruiting tool because it allows Islamic State, the caliphate, to say, see, the Americans said they were going to destroy us. We're still standing. We're still advancing. We can stand up to America. And along with those beheading videos, which may horrify us, but they're catnip to all the young dudes in the Middle East who are radicalized or discontented, etc. Islamic State is a magnetic force for all the malcontents in the Islamic world, and we are strengthening them by our shows, our displays of weakness. And oh, by the way, far from degrading and destroying ISIS, as the president promised to do, ISIS is advancing on Baghdad. They're advancing in Kobani. They're gaining more recruits, slaughtering more people, gaining more territory, and we look and are indeed feckless, ineffective, and cowardly.
Developing now a new twist in how the administration is handling our security. We've been telling you about these warnings from the FBI director that terrorists are determined to strike America and our allies very, very soon. And we know some of the very people fighting on the side of the jihadis are Americans. Yet the FBI director now says these people, whom he says we have specifically identified, can travel freely back to the United States. Seriously, listen.
How many Americans are fighting in Syria on the side of the terrorists?
In the area of a dozen or so.
Do you know who they are?
Yes.
Each and every one of them?
I think of that dozen or so I do. I hesitate only because I don't know what I don't know.
With American passports, how do you keep them from coming home and attacking the homeland?
Ultimately, an American citizen, unless their passport's revoked, is entitled to come back. So someone who's fought with ISIL with an American passport wants to come back, we will track them very carefully.
Oh, great. Judge Andrew Napolitano is our Fox News senior judicial analyst. So they were in Syria fighting with our enemies against us and against our allies, and yet we're going to track them carefully when we allow them to come back in the United States. Can we charge them with treason, Judge?
Well, there's a statute called providing material assistance to a terrorist organization. So if he knows that Americans have been fighting with ISIS, and he also knows that the Secretary of State has declared ISIS a terrorist organization, that is more than enough evidence for him to arrest them upon their re-entry into the U.S. It is crazy to let them back in and wait and see what they do. It's also a waste of FBI resources. And the director, most respectfully, he's a fine lawyer and a wonderful person, should be aware of that.
Well, and who knows whether he's setting policy on this, but it is crazy. So we've identified them by name, fighting in Syria with ISIS, a terrorist organization, and we are going to track them carefully when they come back into America with their U.S. passports. I looked it up. You know what? The Secretary of State can revoke your passport, or at least limit it, revoke or limit it, they say, when, for example, they determine that you are in arrears of child support payments. Child support, Judge.
Right.
no, that they can take your passport away, but if you take up the jihad with ISIS, we're just going to track you carefully.
You know, I have a problem with his being hung up on the issue of the passport. The issue is not the passport. The issue is their freedom to move around in the United States of America after they have left training for some terrorist organization, which is in and of itself a federal crime. That is more than enough to arrest them, charge them, indict them, and keep them from traveling free around the United States, whether they have a passport or not. He knows he can arrest them at JFK or Dulles or anywhere they first land in the United States, and they'll never be free because a grand jury will indict them immediately.
Right, because the other thing that you can revoke somebody's passport on, if you want to go back to the passports, is if there's an outstanding federal arrest warrant for the person holding the passport. So why don't we just get arrest warrants going out for these ISIS fighters, the Americans who went jihadi on us, and arrest them when they return to the United States?
If he knows who they are, as he says he does, and I accept him at his word.
He says he does, right? He says he does.
That is more than enough for his agents to file an application for an arrest warrant, and it will be granted. And then they would be held in jail until they were indicted.
Is it treason? A lot of the viewers think that this is treason.
Technically, it is not treason. The Constitution of the United States provides a very high bar for treason. It means that you provided aid and comfort to the enemy by fighting against the United States. And the enemy is what Congress has declared, not what Barack Obama has declared as the enemy. So the president, by refusing to seek a declaration of war against these people, has taken treason off the table.